Tonight's story takes us back to 1963 when a deputy was shot and a kid was sentenced to death, being released 60 years later. This is the story of Henry Montgomery. On November 13, 1963, Henry Montgomery was a mild-mannered 17-year-old Scotlandville high school student. He had a lower-than-average IQ, and he was nicknamed Wolfman by his friends and family due to his large incisors. On that day, Henry would decide to skip class and head to Anna T. Jordan Community Park. As he was heading over there, at the same time, Charles Hurt, a deputy for Baton Rouge, was out on patrol with his partner. A husband and a father of three, Deputy Charles Hurt was transferred to East Baton Rouge because he was considered equally fair-minded. Following up on a theft case reported previously that day, Charles headed over to Anna T. Community Park as well. Henry, now stopped by Charles, becomes incredibly nervous and begins to fumble within his jacket. All of a sudden, a .22 caliber pistol falls out into his right hand, and both deputies and Henry look at the gun and time stops. Just for a split second until Henry's heart rate screams through the roof and he begins to panic and... Charles laid on the ground, hit by the bullet that left Henry's gun, and during the chaos that developed, Henry made an escape while Charles unfortunately passed. It didn't take long for word to spread. 300 officers and deputies from the nearby parishes joined in on the manhunt for Henry. Roadblocks were constructed, canines were used, while detectives were out questioning friends and family of Henry, sometimes by force. By the time Henry was located, some 28 hours after the shooting, about 3 p.m. the following day, some 60 African Americans were crammed into the tiny jail at the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Station. And 2 days after the arrest, Henry would make his first court appearance, while Charles was having a funeral service held for him. The local paper, the Morning Advocate, covered the trial right from the start. Henry's defense attorneys, instead of arguing his innocence, would attempt an insanity plea, suggesting his learning disabilities and the fact that he was easily provoked caused the shooting, while the prosecution relied on the taped confession, the evidence, and witnesses. And at 17 years old, Henry Montgomery was found guilty, sentenced to death, and sent to Angola prison. Walking into Angola, Henry was in a place no teenager should ever go, even one convicted of murder. And as he got into his cell, the jail door slammed behind him. Henry closed his eyes that night. When they opened, he was in his new home, Angola State Maximum Prison, death row. Known as the bloodiest prison in America, or more commonly, the farm, Angola sprouted from pure evil as it started life as a slave plantation. And if a fellow inmate didn't kill you, you also had to watch out for the guards. Having a carte blanche or blank check on their behavior towards inmates, beatings, cold water sprays, and other forms of torture were common methods used to keep the inmates in line. Sickness was another problem too. It seemed Warden Burl Kane had gently suggested that inmates didn't need medical attention. Now, some issues, like undiagnosed kidney cancer, could be explained away. I mean, things happen. But others, like bedridden prisoners left in their own feces until their bed sores opened wide enough to expose bone, can't be explained away by some innocent medical mistake, which might not have been an issue if the warden didn't hire doctors without valid medical licenses. However, it seemed hiring such doctors gave the prison a bit more profit. In fact, conditions were so bad, 31 prisoners slashed their own Achilles tendon just to gain national attention to the prison. But let's say you survive, checked out. Well, then you were rewarded with joining the prison's for-profit program. Your labor sold for pennies on the dollar to major corporations. However Henry survived beats me, but he did. Remember, on top of the fact that he also had to think of his unavoidable fate, the prison's electric chair. Nicknamed Gruesome Gertie, its last use being as recent as 1991, was quite famous, you could say. Despite the amount of victims it had notched in its belt, one in particular you might know of, the subject of Dead Men Walking, Elmo Patrick Sonnier. Other than that, malfunctioning seemed to be its MO, resulting in very bloody executions, and in some cases forcing the prison to execute the inmate twice, a fact Henry would have been well aware of. And so, that was life for Henry. Violence, corrupt guards, sickness, and thoughts of his inevitable end with a trip to the prison's electric chair. That is, until 1966, when the Louisiana Supreme Court reheard Henry's trial. To completely understand why the Louisiana Supreme Court reheard Henry Montgomery's trial, we have to transport ourselves back to what America was like in 1963. A time when Dr. Martin Luther King had yet to give his I Have a Dream speech. JFK was still in office, and the Civil Rights Act had yet to be signed. A time when there were still pockets that were largely racist and segregated. And within those pockets, there were some groups that took great offense to an African-American kid shooting a white deputy. One of those in particular was the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. That group, in particular, demonstrated how they always demonstrate and went right to cross burnings. Additionally, Henry Montgomery's attorneys would say that they also intimidated the judge into giving Henry the maximum punishment possible, the death penalty. So in 1966, the Louisiana Supreme Court reheard Henry's trial, and after Henry's defense attorney successfully argued that the first verdict was tainted, the judges for the Supreme Court gave the old death sentence the boot, resulting in a new trial and a new conviction for Henry. This time, life in prison, which I think we all can agree is much better than a death sentence, but meant Henry was going back to Angola with the cruel guards, the violent inmates, and the less than adequate medical care. That was until 2016 when Henry was back before a judge, actually a set of judges, the Supreme Court kind. This time, Henry as a plaintiff in a case, Henry versus Louisiana.
In 2016, Montgomery took his case to the Supreme Court, resulting in a landmark ruling, Montgomery versus Louisiana, which gives all juvenile lifers a chance, but as Montgomery found out, no guarantee for parole.
You've had inmates across the country who have gotten out of prison because of you, because of your case, and yet you're still here. How does that make you feel?
Disgusted, but I'm satisfied that some are griefs.
You see, while Henry was in prison, a few very important court cases occurred that directly related to Henry's case. One of those was Roper versus Simmons, which made it unconstitutional for teenagers to receive the death penalty. However, it was Alabama versus Miller Henry would leverage to get his case back before the judge. And so Henry wanted the verdict from Alabama versus Miller to be retroactive and apply to his case. And he got his case heard by the Supreme Court, and when they heard it, they agreed. They threw out his life in prison sentence, making him eligible for parole. But being eligible for parole and being released from prison are two completely different things. If the last 50 years for Henry was like climbing Mount Everest, well then the parole board would be like scaling K2. It would take 2 long years for Henry to go up against the parole board. And on February 26, 2018, at 71 years old, Henry got that chance. To say that this was just going to be your typical everyday parole board meeting would be severely understating the situation. You see, it's not every day that an inmate sentenced to death and then sentenced to life goes up for parole, especially one that has been in some 53 years. One that has been labeled a cop killer that murdered a husband and a father of 3. This was going to be an entirely tense situation. Henry's defense attorneys would throw at the parole board how he was a model inmate, a mentor, attended church regularly, and although he didn't get his GED because of his low IQ, he did complete many job trainings. And so when it came down to vote, the results came back 2-1, 2 being no, 1 being yes. And so Henry was going back to Angola. And the reasons why the parole board said he was denied is because Henry needed to complete more groups. And also they had to contend with Louisiana's very powerful law enforcement associations who all wrote letters in asking for a denial. In addition with Charles Hurt's family, who were still damaged by the loss of Charles Hurt. His kids still grew up without a father, so that was really powerful. And so Henry went back to prison, but he didn't lose hope. Still determined. He was going back to the drawing board because the next time he went up for parole, he was going to win.
Henry Montgomery's journey to this moment in time has been long, complicated, and in the face of opposition. The 75-year-old was just granted parole after serving nearly 58 years behind bars here at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, otherwise known as Angola, the largest maximum security prison in the country. Montgomery was just 17 when he was convicted of murdering Sheriff's Deputy Charles Hurt in 1963. Hurt was married, the father of 3 children. It was the same month JFK was assassinated. Montgomery, a juvenile, yet sentenced to life without parole.
I've been around a while, and it's a long time.
So in 2021, Henry Montgomery successfully won his release from prison, and he actually had another parole board hearing in 2019 that he was denied at. But you see, the difference between the last one and the previous 2 is the laws actually changed. You see, the previous 2, the board members had to vote unanimously. They all had to vote yes. But during that time, the law changed to where majority rules. And so in this last one, he actually got 2 yeses, winning his release from prison. Just amazing story. In a story like this with a lot of twists and turns, we started in 1963 when a 17-year-old murdered a deputy. It leaves you questioning, It leaves you questioning, are you for the victim or are you for the killer? I'll leave that up to you to decide. It's just, like I said, this one pulls at the heartstrings. But other than that, now it's my time to tell you guys thanks. Thanks for making it this far. I really, really appreciate it. I'm a new channel on YouTube, so if you could subscribe and like, maybe comment with your 2 cents about the case, it would really mean a lot to me. And other than that, know that you're loved and appreciated. If you haven't heard it today, let me be the first one to tell you, you are loved and appreciated. And I'll sign off. Later, crows. I'll leave you in the words of Henry Montgomery himself. Later.
I want to let everybody know I'm doing pretty well. I'm, in good shape, getting in good shape. People here taking care of me pretty cool, and I ain't got no problem with nothing. And I'm enjoying my freedom, I want to thank everybody that really cared about me and gave me all the support. And I so appreciate it. I thank all of you. Send my love.